Welcome to episode 161 of the Left Behind Game Club. This week, we deep dive into the story of Yakuza 0. Let's get right into it.
You're listening to the Left Behind Game Club.
Welcome to the Left Behind Game Club, our never-ending attempt to make sure that no game is left behind. I'm your host, Flora Marigold, and today I have two friends with me. The first friend, who I'm going to tentatively refer to as our newest Yakuza convert, Katie Lesperance.
That's presumptuous of you, but you might be right.
And our next friend is returning guest to the show, and from what I can tell, diehard proselytizer of the Yakuza series, Matt Storm, aka Stormageddon.
Hi, I'm so happy to be back. This is excellent. One of my favorite podcasts, and it's been a long time since I was last here. I was on episode 86 talking about The Left of Us. The Left of Us? The Last of Us. The Last of Us with Mike and Jacob. I have yet to podcast with Mo. I'm still convinced he doesn't like me. I called him out in that episode too, so I guess we'll just stick with it.
I mean, he's very elusive, the call-outs probably are needed in these times. Speaking of The Last of Us, have you been keeping up with the HBO show?
I have. Not only that, but I've been keeping up with a little show called Cutscenes, a video game movie podcast, which I happen to be the voice for the intro of. I really like the show. Like, I have similar gripes to that said podcast, and a lot of the majority of folks watching it, but like, the Bill episode destroyed me, as it did everyone else, and like was so beautiful. I just also am a deep Nick Offerman fan, so like that was I was doomed from the start. But like I've enjoyed it. Like there are call out things that I don't like the kiss. Like I get what people are saying when they like it, and I get it, but I did not. But like, it just felt very assault-like, and you know, it's just. But I get why, from like a narrative perspective, why some people thought it was necessary. But anyway, all in all, I have been enjoying the show. I think it's really done an interesting job, and the best part is my spouse Sarah couldn't watch me play the game because it was too scary. Because mostly the gameplay is what's scary.
Yeah.
And because that kind of stuff, the gameplay moments are condensed in the TV show, they have been able to watch it with me, and they've been really enjoying it too, which is really cool.
Oh, that's wonderful.
I won't even give my opinion because my opinion can be found on said podcast Cutscenes. You should probably check it out, everybody, if you want to listen to that.
Yep.
Me, Travis, Jacob talked about The Last of Us.
It's good stuff.
But this is not Cutscenes today.
No.
This is the Left Behind Game Club.
Yeah, so Matt, I want you to refresh the listeners on some of your work, and then we'll get into your history with the Yakuza series.
Sure. I mean, going through all my work we'd be here for 3 days, so I'll do the abridged version. But I am a podcaster, producer, and editor. I've been working in and around the podcast indie space for about 10 years. Before that, I was also a DJ, which I still am technically. I just don't do as much. And I have 4 podcasts that I host with some incredible co-hosts. Katie's actually been on only two of them. You haven't been on Fun and Games or CPOV Autographs yet, but you've been on 2 of them. You've been on Screen Snark and you've been on Reignite. But so I do a TV and movie podcast called Screen Snark with the incredible Rachel Quirky Shank, where we tell jokes, have fun goofs, and talk about the latest thing we've watched. I host CPOV Autographs, which is a interview series that I've been doing for a long time. It was on a previous network. It's now with my other shows. I recently interviewed Patrick Klepek, a very well-known games journalist who is someone I admired for a long time. That was a lot of fun. I host the aforementioned Reignite, which was a Mass Effect podcast, but now in Season 5, we've finished all the Mass Effect games, and we have moved on to Dragon Age. The second episode dropped today, as of when we're recording, of that new season. And then my broader video game show that Jacob has been on several times, one of the forefathers of this pod, it's called Fun and Games. I host it with the incredible Jeff Moonen, and it is a broader kind of like, let's talk about the games industry. Let's have cool topics about modding consoles or entire franchises. We've done retrospectives on Kirby, on Metroid, on Castlevania, and it's been a really good time. And then there's a sub-series within that feed called Side Quests, which Katie has done 2, I believe, and Flora is going to be doing 1. And that is 5 to 15 minute discussion, mostly a monologue about a game the host loves and why they love it. And we have different hosts every episode. We have returning hosts. It's a lot of fun. It's one of my favorite projects that I've ever done, and it just kind of spits out positivity into the game space, which Lord knows we need. And we recently launched a Patreon for Fun and Games, which has been really cool. I'll plug all that nonsense at the end of the show. But and then on top of that, I edit for the Game Informer show. We'll be here all night. It's fine.
And yet you have time to make an appearance on our show. That's astonishing in the grand scheme of things.
I also work a 40-hour-a-week day job, too. So, there's that. So,
And I imagine the content consumption angle of things, like actually playing games like Yakuza that take potentially over 100 hours, that's no small feat either. So, incredible stuff.
Thank you.
So let's get into just briefly, I pick up that you are a very enthusiastic fan of the Yakuza series. I want to know what your history was, your entry point, etc.
Sure. So I got into it very late. I didn't play it in the PS2 era. A little sad story that has a happy ending that will be the through line for this. In the middle of 2020, at the height of the pandemic, my apartment building, where I own an apartment in, had a roof fire, and I got displaced. My partner and I were displaced for almost 2 years, 18 months, 3 weeks, 10 days, something like that. Not 18 weeks, 18 months rather. God, if only 18 weeks. But we're back now, so everything's okay. But in that time, I had started Yakuza 0 right before we got displaced. But then I obviously, due to the kerfuffle, I couldn't. And we were living in a hotel for a month before we got a temporary apartment we could live in. And I schlepped my computer into that hotel and was sitting at one of the little cocktail tables in this a suite we were in, and I had my computer set up, and it's where I did my podcast recordings and some other stuff in that interim period. And while I was there one day, I was unemployed at the time. I didn't have a day job, and my spouse was on a work call in a meeting, and I was like, you know what? I should get back to Yakuza 0. A friend of mine and the person who did the side quest episode for Fun and Games, Derek Van Dyke, did an incredible episode about Yakuza 0. And I was like, this game seems just the right perfect mesh of melodrama and quirky goofiness to get me through. And of course, I fell in love with it. I got completely obsessed with it, did all the side quests, sang a lot of karaoke. It was great. And I got really into it. And then I noticed at that time, I think it was PS Plus had just given us Yakuza Kiwami 1, and I was like, you know what? I never played the first one. Let me jump into that. And then from there, it was all downhill. I played that, and then I think I played 2 on Game Pass because Kiwami 2 had just come to Game Pass. And then after that, for I think my birthday that year or Hanukkah, my spouse Sarah got me the remaster collection of 3, 4, and 5. And so I played all of those on my PS4 at the time, got through all of them, and then bought Yakuza 6 afterwards and played that. Or maybe I played that on Game Pass also. I can't quite remember. And just loved the entire franchise. Fell in love with all the characters. Kiryu became my BFF. And then shortly after Yakuza Like a Dragon came to PS5, I bought it and then promptly did not play it for a year. I think getting through the entire franchise burned me out a little bit. Also, and I don't want to spoil anything, but 6 ends so perfectly for Kiryu. Especially it wraps up Kiryu's story so perfectly that I was like, I don't want to jump into a new story with a new protagonist. I didn't know much about Ichiban yet, and I was like, I'm not ready. This was a great ending. I'm going to sit with it for a while. But then I think it was last year sometime. I was like, you know what? I have this game. I know it's a JRPG now. I've been craving a JRPG experience. Let me pop it in. And then, of course, I fell in love with Yakuza all over again. I played through Like a Dragon. Yeah. I will admit that in the interim remaster games, I didn't do all the sub-stories. I know there's some of the best stuff, but I needed to get through some of these games. But Yakuza 0, Kiwami 1 and 2, I did most of the sub-stories. But yeah, and so I played through the whole franchise over the course of 2.5 years. I'm very excited for Ishin, which is just around the corner as of when we're recording. I really love this franchise. There's something about something that can be the dumbest thing you've ever played and the most brilliantly written thing you've ever played at the same time. We're going to get into the story, but I've cried during this series multiple times. And what's even better, without spoilers for Katie, the thing that Yakuza 0 does that you go, oh my God, I can't believe, the revelatory moment, they do that in every game, and every time you never see it coming. You think you do, and then you don't. Something happens, and you're like, oh my God, and then we're off to the races for the final act. It happens in every game and every time. It's a gut punch, and it's incredible. So that, I'm a big fan of great storytelling, and there's just so much heart to this game. it's made its way around the internet, but Ichiban stands up for sex workers in the newest game. Like, I love a lot of, like, it's not always perfect when it comes to, like, representation and how it handles queer stuff and other things, but, like, it does a pretty good job. Amongst a lot of the other series that are out, it does a pretty good job. It's not perfect, but it does a pretty good job. Also, it paints most straight, horny men in a bad light, and I'm all for that at all times. Like, just let's go. So yeah, that's kind of where I am, and I'm excited for Ishin. I'm excited for the man who erased his name later this year, supposedly, and of course, Like a Dragon 2/Yakuza 8. The naming conventions has gotten confusing recently.
Yeah, we probably should address that. The series is officially taking on the name Like a Dragon, which is the Japanese name that's been used for the series forever. And I don't know if there's going to be a re-release of these games eventually where they are officially retitled. But for now, I think referring to it as the Yakuza series still is probably the easiest and most natural way to do so.
For sure.
Yeah, there's tons I could respond to, but it's a great time to be a Yakuza fan right now. Just so many games on the horizon, and these games are more accessible than ever. They're on like every platform, even like the remasters and stuff, because they've been locked away to like Sony hardware forever.
Yeah.
So we've talked a little bit about your history, but I believe you have a question for us. I'm really curious what this is going to be.
Yes. So one of my favorite things about this very stupid, very brilliant game series is that whenever it's mostly these men, although they get better about that later in the franchise, but mostly these men hit the peak of their bravado. In order to fight each other, they have to rip off their shirt and suit jacket at the same time, seamlessly, with no
tearaway
issue.
Suits. The tailoring and the attention to detail put into these suits, because not only do they have to fit, they have to instantly tear away shirt, suit, jacket, pants, all in one. Sorry, not pants. They keep pants on. I take that back.
If only.
In one swoop.
That's a
to
mod.
the point my spouse was watching me at one point. I was like, watch. He's going to tear his suit off in one go. And he's like, wow, that was really impressive. I'm like, right? It's been happening all game. Yes.
And of course that happens
stuff.
to show off their incredible tattoos. You know, it's very common in the lore and the knowledge of actual Yakuza in life that those back tattoos are often a symbol of the kind of person you are, or like they represent how you feel or whatever. And so I always love that. It's the dumbest thing that's never played for laughs. Like, my favorite thing about all the funny stuff in these games is most of the time they are played seriously, almost every time.
Yeah.
And that's
dead serious.
That's what makes it great, and they know that. So anyway, my question is, and I'll answer it as well to give you some time, but if you were to, in battle, which could, complications aside on the details, but if you were to rip off your shirt to show a back tattoo on your back to fight another Yakuza, what would your back tattoo be? And I wanted to ask this because I was thinking about this recently, and I don't know that I've ever asked another person who's a fan of the series this question. And so for me...
This is not what I expected the question to be. I had no idea.
Not at all.
I would never have guessed.
Excellent. I love my dog Otis, my new puppy, so much. And so while ideally if I was going to have a dog, I would want to say it's him, but it's not, because I feel like it would definitely be a dog, but it has to be the dog that represents my energy the best. And so I would have a husky on my back because I am big, dumb, and lovable. And so like that's my persona within the Yakuza, I think. And so I would have a husky back tattoo. And so now I'm curious for the two of you if you know what your animal or mythical creature would be.
Now I know. At first, I thought I have no idea. I'm gonna have to think about this for a while. I'm gonna delay this entire pod. No, now I know. After you said that, it would be Grumpy Cat.
Perfect.
That feels
it would be
so
Grumpy
fitting.
Cat because I am generally in a decent mood most of the time, but there are certain factors where I am Grumpy Cat. I will just glare and be like, don't talk to me. Don't bother me. Don't talk to me. Just leave me be. I have a mug. I have a coffee mug that has Grumpy Cat on it that says, good morning, no such thing.
I love it. Perfect.
I had a Grumpy Cat with like a banner that says that, like, no such thing. And then I would just take people out.
That's awesome.
I'm really happy with it, actually.
I love that.
That is a fantastic question. Just a point of clarity. This has to be an animal?
So animal.
styling?
No, it can be a mythical creature like
Any creature.
It can be
though,
whatever
like
you want it to
animate.
be. Whatever makes you ready
Honestly,
to beat up on Yakuza mob members or disgruntled youth.
Yeah.
Whatever it is that gets that into your spirit, you know.
Yeah, it can be any creature, anything. Like if there's another person you want to get tattooed on your back, like sure, go for it. Like whatever.
Well, I've got a couple potential answers here. One isn't an animate being whatsoever, but like when I was younger, like probably closer to 19 years old or so, I really wanted to get the human transmutation circle from Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood on my back.
That's cool.
But I was going to get like my entire back was going to be this, but the tattoo artist in question at the time was like, this is going to fade and blend into each other really quickly, and you're no longer going to be able to read all of the distinct characters. So I was heavily cautioned against doing that. Although, I mean, in this like anime Japanese universe, I feel like I could kind of get away with it.
Tattoos don't bleed in anime.
Yeah.
Exactly. So maybe there's a version of me that would go for that, and I can just like, I don't know why I would want to do human transmutation in a Yakuza fight, but like, hey, it's an option.
Right.
Another thing that I feel like I should mention here is Katie mentioned an online internet famous cat. The first animal that came to mind was another internet famous cat called Lil Bub. I don't know if either of you ever knew Lil Bub. Lil Bub was like a cat that had like osteoporosis and like didn't really have like a firm jaw and stuff. And like it as a result had really cute like eyes and a tongue sticking out the whole time, and like it was known for like science and magic. And I got to meet this cat. It went like on tour and stuff. Believe it or not.
This feels like such a Yakuza conversation.
Yeah, it really
of just
does.
like the weirdest nonsense, and I'm like, yes, I'm here for it.
There's a sub story. You got to meet the cat with osteoporosis.
Yeah, exactly.
The science and magic cat. And like as far as vibes and themes channeling through the fight, like science and magic, I feel like that's enough to overcome someone on a rooftop when I'm ripping my shirt off.
Yeah.
And I guess the final thing I'll say is, like, it's still technically a being, but in the background of my stream is a Haunter plushie.
Yeah.
I think having a giant Haunter on my back would be awesome, because Haunter's, like, the perfect hybrid of, like, emo but silly.
Yeah.
And so all of the things I just mentioned.
Sure.
Maybe
any
all
of
at
those,
once, all together.
Yeah. I could probably keep going, but, like, this isn't the Tattoo podcast.
No.
This is the Yakuza Zero podcast.
Correct. Well, thank you.
That's a wonderful question.
Thank you for humoring me. I enjoyed your responses.
Yeah, that's great. So in our first part 1 episode of Yakuza 0, we sort of set the stage for what this game is. We talked a little bit about the mechanics. We delved into some of the character introductions a little bit. But we didn't really get into any of the actual plot or any of the actual like nuances of the characters, how they develop, what the relationships are, all of those sorts of things. But we left things off from Katie kind of just dipping, like, I guess, her ankle deep into the story, and I kind of want to know from there, like, what your overall impressions were, takeaways, any highlights. We can kind of just start anywhere, Katie. How was the rest of Yakuza 0?
That's a big question.
Start anywhere.
Well, so, yeah, we left off meeting Majima pretty much right around there, the first Majima chapter.
Well, just to, like, refresh the listener at least, you were suggesting you were in a position of, like, I didn't expect to really like this, and if you gave me this pitch on paper, I probably wouldn't have been sold, but when you were dropped into the absurdity, the kind of vacillation between serious melodrama and absurd practical comedy, you just kind of were ready for the shock and the unexpectedness. Do you think that continued?
Okay, so it definitely did. The melodrama, it just ramps up and up and up and up.
Yep.
I mean, you've got brothers, metaphorical brothers, having a showdown in the forest, in the dark forest, and like, you're my brother, and like all that stuff. And then you know, we'll talk about how the plot unveils itself and how I did not see, shocker, didn't see it coming.
Yeah.
But I think one of my biggest takeaways is that it never stopped surprising me. Even though I played so much this game, and I still have not played. Like, I tapped out. I was like, okay, I'm done. Because I tried to do as much side stuff as I could because I wanted to.
Right.
And I kind of took that as far as my appetite for it took me, which was very far. I played this game for over 79 hours.
Let's go.
That sounds about
How
right.
did that happen? It just melted away.
Yep.
But in the completion percentage on the screen, I completed 61% of this game.
Yep.
How is that possible?
That's still a lot.
Yeah.
It's a
The
lot.
completion list is no joke.
No. So, just the side quest just kept on surprising me. Like, I thought I was like, I think I have a handle on this and like what I'm going to be shown. Kind of same thing with the plot. Like, I'm like, I think I have an idea of the plot more or less. And then no, you don't. There are surprises to be had. There are dominatrixes to meet. It kept bringing me back. And I just kind of want to run around the street and see what I ran into. And it continued for a long time.
Well, since you brought up your hour count, Katie, something close to 80 hours, I'm curious, Matt, do you happen to have a figure in the ballpark of how long you've put into Zero?
Unfortunately, I don't. It was on Game Pass, and I've since uninstalled it just to make room on my computer.
Oh, totally fair.
I don't think Game Pass keeps that info. If it does, it's not super readily available. I can stall while I look it up. But, I mean, I will say that I did put a ton of time into it because... For me, like, I moved with the story pretty quick, but then at somewhere point around the middle of the story, I really started to realize exactly, like, the ridiculousness of the sub-stories. So, like, a little preamble, like, in the side quest episode I mentioned, my friend talks about the real estate mini games and how the bowling mini game is related to it and a certain chicken that you unlock. And like that was my gateway into the bowling part of the game because it's like, well, I got to get the chicken. I need to know about the chicken.
Course. Obviously, I have to get the chicken.
And so like for me, it was one of those things where I was like, all right, well, I did this, so now let's see what other kind of sub stories there are. And like I went down a rabbit hole, and I also did not do all of them. This doesn't help. So it says time played 2 days, 1 hour, and 38 minutes. But days doesn't help me because that's not.
So like 50 hours?
Yeah, I guess so. I was on the lighter side. Yeah, about 50 hours, something like that.
Only 50.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like that's the thing about the Yakuza games that I think I love is like you could dive super deep into the story and and the submissions and still not get anywhere near everything done. And it could be kind of crazy making. Like I used to be a completionist back in the day, but I started saying about, I think it was last year on my video game podcast, that my new kink is ignoring side quests. Because like I played so many large games and like you just like The Witcher 3 I loved, but you cannot finish that game if you do all the side quests. You have to ignore them and just play the main story. And like I had started playing Final Fantasy 14 also, which is like a great MMO.
Huge.
But like, and you can ignore the side quests in that game and still level up appropriately for the content, but like you can't. And so like this is another one of those games like eventually I tap out, like Katie was saying, on the submissions just because they're all great, but I also have other stuff to do and other games to play. So like it's just one of those things where I love the game, but eventually I need to go get through the main story.
Yeah. And then I would get my fill of sub stories and then go, I gotta continue this story.
Yeah.
And then go back into the story and be just as enthralled all over again.
Yeah.
Like one of the major, plot stories is it Makoto? Is that her name?
Yeah.
I'm bad with names.
Makoto
as we know.
Makimura.
Majima is tasked with assassinating her, and then changes his mind basically, doesn't want to do it, and ends up being like her caretaker, and then that pairing up with the Tachibana character from the Kiryu story, who is basically presents at first as a real estate developer who's trying to like go up against the Yakuza. More or less. And then it's kind of similar to what I said before. Like, if you wrote this on paper, I'm not that interested. It doesn't sound that interesting, really. Yeah. But just the way everyone's so involved and the way that Majima gets so emotionally attached with the whole situation really just like grounds you in. And then also Kiryu with Nishi, help me out.
Nishikiyama?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Those two. I didn't care for him at first, Nishikiyama. Yeah. And then I'm like, oh, no, they're brothers. I was like, no, I like him now. And then it just, I don't know, it just grabs you.
Yeah. It's one of those things that I love about this narrative and every other Yakuza game, and Flora can back me up, but like most of the multi-story, because Yakuza does this a bunch. 1 and 2 don't really have multiple stories, but then the games after that do kind of have simultaneous rails going together. And every time you start one, you go, I have no idea how this is going to connect to the other stuff. Like, and then every time they stick the landing when they connect them. And like, that's what I love so much about the story in this game is, so I already liked Kiryu. I had heard a little bit about him, but like I also knew who Majima was. I knew he was this Joker-esque character, the irony which Mark Hamill voices him in the American version for the PS2. But like this goofy character that's over the top. And like, of course, being a pansexual, non-binary human, when I saw both Kiryu and this version of Majima, I went, oh no, they're both so hot. Oh no. But like, then got so wrapped up in their storylines, and then like how everything resolves itself. Like, if you get through Zero and then you move on to literally any other game in the series, you are only rewarded for playing Zero because of how things tie back to what happened to Majima specifically. Kiryu also, but like especially the melodrama that Majima goes through in this and the heartbreak and how you see this upstanding, pretty mild-mannered person essentially have a psychotic break in real time is just fascinating to me. Like, they don't just make him a crazy person. Like, he goes through it, and it's just... I love the writing. Also, the Japanese voice actors in this game, like, are some of the best. Like, I hear that Like a Dragon has incredible English voice acting, and I don't fault anyone who wants that, right? Totally get it. I'm playing Persona 5. Persona 5 has English voice acting, but they all say they're speaking Japanese. So, like, I get it. But, like, for me, I cannot play these games in English. The Japanese is what I want to hear because it just feels so core to the melodrama, not just the voice acting and the culture. And so, yeah, I love how this story specifically, above all of the others, connects those dots, especially with the real estate story. Because like you said, Katie, like it doesn't sound like it would be interesting, but they make it.
Kiryu's done being a Yakuza member, and he goes into real estate.
Yeah.
Great. That sounds fantastic. And the next thing you know, I'm running down the street going, I'm going to buy this building, and I'm going to buy that building too. And Tachibana, what about him? And like, now he's my friend. And yeah, it's well done.
Yeah, and I would just echo so much of what you just said, Matt. Like, the way that this game nods to future games, like this game is made so late in the cycle of Yakuza development that they're able to like strategically place those nods. Yeah. Like one of my favorite sub-stories involves a preview of an adolescent version of one of the main antagonists of a future Yakuza game, Ryuji Goda. Yeah. The little blonde kid. I don't know if you both played the sub-story here, but like there's a guy who has had his pants stolen. And that's like the beginning inciting incident here. And then later you fight this little like preteen / young teenager. And it's this punk kid with blonde hair. And he wallops you. This is in Sotenbori. And it turns out, I want to say the quest is called like Rise of the Dragon, and that's a future antagonist, like a final boss character, and I want to say either Kiwami or Kiwami 2.
I believe it's Kiwami
so those
2,
nods are. Yeah, those nods are there. And then the other point I'd echo about the Japanese voice acting, like, I don't know if you've played the Judgment games at all.
I played a little bit of the first one. I want to play. I have it, and I want to play it. I haven't gotten through it yet.
Yeah, I think Judgment, for some reason, like, even though it's very similar, it didn't grab me right away in the same way, although Lost Judgment, the second one, I think is fantastic and of the same caliber as, like, a Yakuza 0 or a Like a Dragon. But the point that you made about, like, even if I have the option, I wouldn't want to turn on the English voice acting, I feel exactly the same way, because I think the delivery of that is part of the vibe and the tone of all of this. Part of what keeps me drawn in the Yakuza world is, like, how authentically Japanese it feels. And given the fact that I've never spent time in that specific culture, that immersion I think is really important linguistically. There's more to be said, but like I guess the final thought there is this game's plot is all centered around an empty, abandoned lot. Mm-hmm. This little tiny piece of seemingly insignificant property. And that piece of real estate not only anchors all of the conflict in Yakuza 0, but the result of that architecturally, like once that is joined with everything else, becomes a recurring theme in all of the Yakuza games over and over and over. So Yakuza 0 really sets the sort of like motifs for the series, I guess.
Absolutely. I mean, I also think being on the hindsight being 2020 and being on the other side of having played all of these games now, like ultimately I want people to get into the series. Folks who start with like a dragon, it's a good starting point. It's a new hero. But like for me, I've done this with a few different series, some shorter, some longer. It just feels more rewarding to see a story all the way through in order. And like I did it last year with the Shantae series, which are much shorter, much more arcadey games. But getting to have played the first one on the Game Boy Color, although the Switch version, and then go all the way up through the newest one that came out only a couple of years ago. When I finished that last game, I was like, it's a complete story. Like I'm not a completionist anymore, but narratively, I love complete stories. I love watching entire seasons of stuff. I like watching entire series of stuff. And I think because Yakuza is so narratively focused, it felt like just watching an episode of TV every time I played a chapter. Like because of like the beat 'em up stuff is fun and I love it. And boy, do I love throwing people around like a wrestler. Beast mode, favorite. But like there's something so compelling about the narrative that like when I get to put my controller down for a minute and just kind of watch and vibe and enjoy these narrative moments, they're just so well written in a way that even some of the best well-written games, like I mentioned Witcher 3 before, which for the most part is a pretty well-written game, it just doesn't compare. It's like apples and oranges. And I think it's because even though the battles are not grounded in reality, like on almost any level, the narrative is. And it also is not afraid to be, like I mentioned the karaoke jokingly before, like this game is not afraid to be tender, and the Yakuza series is not afraid to be tender with men in a way that I feel like a lot of other franchises are. Like there are still some things that can lean a little into homophobia and like just you expect that with mafia stories, right? And manly men, but like Kiryu is a sensitive person who deeply cares for his brother. Like, you know, and then Majima's story, especially knowing even a little bit about Majima later, to see him feel so tender and kind and caring for this blind woman who he ends up falling for is just it's so saccharine sweet, you know, on the other side of like teaching a dominatrix to be a dominatrix, right? Like, so that I think ultimately is why I love this story so much. It just tackles writing in a way that I feel like no other game has, or has made me cry or feel. Like I compare it to the Mass Effect series, which I've also been very emotionally invested in for many years. Yeah. But like that's the kind of thing that I love. Not every game needs to have it, but it's what keeps me coming back to Yakuza is absolutely the writing. The other stuff is great too, but that's what like really pulls me in, like makes me lean in, like you were saying, Katie, like really get invested.
Yeah. And I think the melodrama of it is what keeps me, because I'm not usually one for things that are very sweet or loving and tender. I'm like, that's great, but it's not usually something that keeps me someplace. But it's the melodrama that's layered on top that, I don't know, that just keeps me like entertained at the same time. Like to me, that is like the sugar that goes with like not the medicine. I mean, I love the story. Right. I really, really enjoyed it. But that's like the entertainment factor that's added on top of it that it keeps me like, it's almost like popcorn cinema along with this greatly written story.
Totally.
Yeah, it's great. I'm in. I'm so in. I will at some point I will play the other games. I will probably be on a little bit more on the mainlining side. Yeah. Like I'm going to pick and choose which games that I'm going to like sink into for a while. I'm probably just going to like mainline it because there's too many of them. There's just too many. And if they all have like this much to do, you can't do that.
No.
But no, I am sold. I'm in.
Hell yeah. I will tell you the thing I've told other folks diving in. My recommendations are to try and sample the sub-stories, but honestly, the mainline narrative is totally worth it. Kiwami 1 is pretty good. Kiwami 2, I think, is better. 3 is going to be the toughest hurdle because 3 in the remaster collection is the oldest. It's a PS3 game, and so it's the clunkiest, but it's still got one of the better narratives, and there is a moment, I don't want to even spoil or hint at it, in that game that I think about and I cry. So but then 4 and 5 are both PS4 games, and they run pretty well, and they introduce one of the suavest and coolest characters in the franchise. And then 6 is just the perfect capstone to Kiryu's narrative, and that's a PS4 game, and looks incredible. And then, of course, Like a Dragon is great. I think that, I think for sure 1 and 2 you probably want to do more like Yakuza 0, just because they're similar, not the same. But 3, 4, and 5 you may want to mainline, just because they're great, but they are the roughest, especially 3.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly endorse that sort of playlist recommendation there, where these games vary in the essential nature of their side content, and the mechanical clunkiness is a major factor in that.
Yeah.
I definitely agree with Matt in the sense that jumping back to 3 doesn't feel natural. Not to mention there's a major setting shift, pacing shift in the first act of that game, and the remake nature of Kiwami and Kiwami 2 I think makes them very accessible to the side content that you're probably going to be feeling a little more used to from 0. But there's a real chance that you could play this series and you'll just start to feel repetition and burnout. I didn't feel that way personally, but we're talking hundreds of hours of content.
I wouldn't dive in right away. No. I was like, oh no, that's a later thing, but I do intend to.
Yeah.
There's a ton there.
The one other thing about 3 I'll say is it's very funny to play that after playing 0, 1, and 2, because time-wise, it's the first of the games to have voice acting and this cast. So the Kiryu voice actor, who sounds so consistent through 0, 1, and 2, is the same Japanese Kiryu in 3, but it was the first time the games had the Japanese voice actors.
I didn't know that.
And so it sounds like him, but there are moments where it doesn't, because he's discovering the character.
Yeah.
After that, he's been this character so long, it's so easy. But and I believe Majima, it's his first time also having that voice actor as well in that game, and it's very funny when you play in order, because it's solid, solid, solid. Oh, what's up with the voice acting? Solid, solid, solid. Because it's just they were learning. The PlayStation 2 games had English voice actors, I think. They may have done the voices in the Japanese versions, I don't know. But just from the American audience side, I noticed that, which was pretty entertaining.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned earlier, moments from 3, moments from this, moments from such and such. Moments in this game, because there's a good amount of them.
Yeah.
For me, I think the moment where I went more than any, there were plot ones that were surprising. Right. I mean, I think your biggest ones are that Makoto turns out is the owner of the lot,
empty lot,
of the empty lot, and then also that Makoto and Tachibana are siblings, are long lost siblings, who grew up in China and came over and lost each other more or less, and then have been trying to find each other again. But the moment that I went was when Tachibana gets hit in the head with a sledgehammer. Mm-hmm. And I actually gasped out loud. Yeah. Because I was because it was just so gruesome, and I was like, well, he's dead. It's Yakuza. We're blowing people up with Marlin cannons, but in a cutscene, the man got hit in the head with a sledgehammer. I was like, oh my god, he's dead. And I didn't see. You see it coming because that Yakuza boss is glaring at him menacingly, and you're like, he's up to something. But he grabs the sledgehammer. I was like, oh no, something's gonna stop it. Something's gonna happen.
Yeah. Exactly.
And you see him get hit with this thing, and I just sat back and gasped, and it was like, oh no, anything can happen. Oh no, and then his death was the saddest for me. The saddest part of the entire game was the most emotionally affecting moment.
Yeah.
I totally agree. I didn't see that coming either. And then the fact that death scene leads to a failed reuniting between these siblings, where they have been sort of fighting against the odds to reunite this whole time. And Makoto's just outside of this place where Tachibana has been tortured. I want to say by Kuze's men. And Kuze's a lieutenant in the Dojima family who you fight 5 times.
Oh my god, over and over and over again. I was like, I'm fighting this man again?
not to derail the emotional catharsis of the scene there, but like I thought when you said like moments in the Yakuza 0 game, like the one that I will never forget is when Kuze's in an underground tunnel and Kiryu's been running in the sewers, and he shows up at the other end of this tunnel on a motorbike, turns on the light, and then with like a lead pipe in his arm, screaming, and we get like this close-up still frame, and it like gives us the bold text of who this guy is. He then comes and slams with the acceleration of a motorbike this iron pipe into Kiryu's forearm. He just blocks it, and then they fight.
Everything's fine.
So good. Derailing a little bit, the one of the more recent trailers for Ishin showed that actor, because it's based on an actual like lore folk tale, but
motorcycles in tunnels and
motorcycle
jousting.
The actor who plays Kuze is playing a different character in Ishin because it's based on folklore, but they are supplanting all of these Yakuza characters to play these folklore characters. And like when I saw him, I was like, oh, awesome, because his performance is just excellent in this. But I love the boss fights so much. They just get more and more ridiculous. But going back to that, like that's the scene that broke me. That, and then of course the scene after where I think it's in the rain and she's in the lot, like with the watch or whatever. Like the reveal of the watch, his watch or whatever, when she finally has it. Like I just wept. Like and then even like, Majima worked so hard to reunite and did so much for this girl. And then, like, again, ostensibly the birth of the Mad Dog, when we see that happen, like that heartbreaking scene where he just doesn't engage. He just pretends like he doesn't know her. And she, of course, can't see. So she, she doesn't know him. Like, just, ugh.
Just to fill in a little bit of that, in case it's been a while for someone listening, like the Mad Dog scene that you're referring to at the end of the game, Makoto's character is blind this whole game, and this is due apparently to psychological trauma. That there's an inciting moment towards the late game of the story where she starts to get her vision back, and as she does, the game sort of concludes with her seemingly being fully functional with her vision again, and this whole relationship that she's built with Majima's character throughout the entire game has been without seeing him. And so Majima chooses to kind of remain silent in this moment, and there's no moment to confirm that this is the person that she's built this like almost anonymous, quasi-anonymous relationship with. And Majima is sort of in that moment doing let's say a self-sacrificial gesture, because it would be really easy for him to like bully this like salesperson, salaryman boyfriend that she's now got.
That poor boyfriend.
He goes up to the boyfriend and is like, hey, make sure you protect her and take care of her no matter what, sort of thing. And he gets a determined response, which then enables him to, so to speak, move on. That's a genuinely heartbreaking moment, because the presumption of unrequited love in that scenario, when nothing bad happened, nothing catastrophic happened between these characters, other than that growth had pulled them apart. I think that really resonated with me, especially on the second playthrough. Yeah,
I should acknowledge the elephant in the room that like blindness handled here is a little ableist, right? Like you can't just cure blindness.
But that was odd.
Yeah,
the whole thing. I was like, wait, why is she blind? Why can she see?
Yeah.
And it was confusing.
But it's a narrative hook, and I get why they did it, but I can totally understand a blind person or someone who's partially blind to be annoyed or even offended by that. Like, it is kind of haphazard at best. But, I agree. I think that, also at that point in the story, even though he's become the Mad Dog, you're still so behind this character, behind Goro Majima, and like, and it's just, God, I can't even think about it too long. It just, it kills me. But I just love the lead up to that. I think that, again, the empty lot, which just becomes more important as the series goes on, it's constantly mentioned in every chapter all the time. And yet you still have no idea why it's important until we get to that end.
Yeah, it definitely, you go, oh, the significance matters once you realize Makoto is the owner, and you're like, okay, that's where we're tying this all together, because everything, there's mismatched pieces everywhere that you didn't really understand how they fit, and then they fit them all together in a really good way.
So I think that the slow reveal of the significance of the empty lot is worth unpacking a little bit as well. Like, in the beginning of the game, this empty lot is kind of obscured in its importance. Like, the game begins there, where Kiryu, like, is taking care of some, again, salesperson. He assaults him, whatever, takes money from him and leaves, and then he's then framed. I just like diminished the importance of assault, sorry. He then, the guy dies by gunshot, which Kiryu didn't have a gun on the scene, and so the game begins because of this like murder framing plot, and like Kiryu leaves the Yakuza to like go ahead and be able to investigate the situation freely, blah blah blah. But as we move forward, we start to see from like Majima's perspective with his sort of handler, Sagawa, who has been like threatening him and controlling him and giving him orders and getting him to control this cabaret that he's running and blah, blah, blah. All of these things, we just get snippets until the point where it feels like it's almost like a series of Russian nesting dolls of who is playing what degree of chess in this this story. So you start off and you think that there's just this grunt and this henchman sort of like relationship, and they got vague orders from someone way up top, and then you realize that all of these intermediary people are also accounting for the fact that these people will behave in various ways. And like towards the late game, we get this reveal that this other character, I want to say Shimano, is the one who's like, oh, I knew that Majima wouldn't be able to go through with this hit on Makoto Makimura, and so I sent him that way. And like all of these layers, they're incredibly unrealistic, but they add to that melodrama, and it just keeps having further like rug pulls the whole game through.
Yeah.
There was an issue for me where I was like, okay, there's too many people. I don't know. I don't remember. I was like, oh, that person. You were
need
there.
Like a taxonomy.
Yeah, I do. When they come back onto the screen, I need like a little bullet point like that. They talked to so-and-so and they did this and they...
Yeah.
Because I was like, I don't even remember who this person is. I was like, I know I've seen you. I know that you have a plot of some sort, but there are so many people that in such a convoluted story that I was like, I kind of gave up on, for certain characters, of trying to remember who they were. I was like, I'm not going to know who you are, and that's okay. You're a big mean guy, and you have a plot, and that's good enough. Yep. And then I kind of focused on certain people more so. The relationship between Majima and Sagawa is the oddest thing to me. I don't, because throughout it all, I mean, Sagawa tortures Majima at one point, does he not?
Full on,
yes, completely.
And
he's like tied up to a pole. Yeah.
Yes, and he's got him basically captive in this city, and he's like, "No, you're gonna work for me, and you need to make up this much money, and you're in this like city prison, more or less." And I did not understand, but to the end, Majima still kind of looks to him as almost like a not a father figure, but like
some paternal role,
like a mentor.
Yeah.
And I'm like, when is this going to end? Like, I don't understand. All the way to the end. Like, that's how they part, with, like, mutual respect somehow. And that kind of made me want to play more Yakuzas, because I was like, I feel like this has to go somewhere. Maybe it doesn't. I don't know. But even if I just spend more time with characters, and maybe I'll understand it better. Maybe I'll feel like I'll get it better. But that relationship was... not that I didn't like it. Like I didn't have any problems with it. I found it the most frustrating relationship, where I'm like, just step out of it. Like, it's this abusive relationship that I'm like, it's very frustrating to see someone, stay in a situation, and you're like, but you can do this. Like, you can do better. You can get out. You can figure out a way out of your situation. He's very capable. And then to the end, I'm like, oh, he's still your mentor. It's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's just a through line with the Yakuza franchise, is these flawed mentors. And I think this game really sets that dynamic up, because just about in every game, a main character does have that kind of push and pull rather. And as far as not remembering characters, that's okay, because every game after this will remind you of the important players that you've already seen before. Because a lot of the living characters in this game appear again, at least in Kiwami and Kiwami 2, and then it evolves from there. So don't feel that bad about it. I think also for me, like, even when I got to Like a Dragon, which I loved, and the cameos in that are top notch, there were some that I still was like, wait, who was that again? I know the face, but like, so there's a lot of characters. And so don't like, feel free to consult a wiki. There's no harm in like refreshing, like you're fine. Totally legit.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah, and every game does that big, bold, red text of, like, this person, this role in this family. The game just assumes by default that you need that context every time. And some of the scenes even redundantly spell some of those relationships out. It's not exposition heavy in the same way that, like, it's not, like, bad writing necessarily. It just always reassures you, like, hey, it's okay. We also know that there's 700 characters per game. I think the success of this game and the amount of characters in it is that they're all visually distinct. I don't think that it's easy to confuse them from a visual standpoint, but as far as like, oh, where do you fit in the family tree? I couldn't tell you even what branch they fit on most of the time.
Yeah.
Like I can pinpoint the 3 lieutenants, like the major players over the empty lot who was fighting for it. I can tell you like, oh, this really, really old guy is the patriarch, so on and so forth. But like, beyond that, there's so many, like, I think this is also added to by like the proliferation of sub-stories and all these other smaller characters that you deal with. It's simply impossible without diagramming it out to have that all memorized, I think.
The other big moment for me, as far as like touchstones in the story, is Makoto wants to get revenge because some of the Yakuza bosses basically had Tachibana killed.
Yeah.
Yep.
Kuze? I don't know. It doesn't matter. So she plots revenge. She's basically like, oh, yeah, I'll give you the empty lot. You didn't even have to pay me for it, but you're going to have to kill all of your lieutenants.
Yeah.
Which was like, it felt like a very, like melodramatic anime, plan.
Yeah.
And I was like, did you think that was going to work? Did you? And then they're like, no, we're just going to kill you and take it. I'm like, well, yeah, that was what was going to happen. But still, that moment of it going back on her. And also, you could tell that she was just that desperate to get revenge. She's like, well, this is what I have. I have the empty lot. So that's the one thing of value that I have that they want. So I'll use that. And then obviously it doesn't work out because she's playing in a pond with very, very big fish. And she is a minnow, and she gets shot and nearly killed. Yeah. I was upset when I thought that she was actually dead.
Yeah.
That was the closest I got to being like, I could, if she had died, I could have welled.
Yeah.
But I was waiting for it. I was like, no, she's not dead. Never mind. I'm not going to well up. But I could have if we had gotten there.
That's a note worth commenting on as well, is that there's so many moments in Yakuza 0, in particular this game in the series, where like characters get shot or like presumably they're killed and then they come back just Deus Ex Machina over and over and over. Yeah. And like some characters, I went to the hospital and now I have a crutch, and like or some other characters like, I just have bandages around me and I'm able to fully fight the next scene later. That becomes a trope throughout the game. And I know we spoke about this on part 1, but like canonically, Kiryu has never killed anybody.
Correct.
Which is absurd.
But like the rules around that are incredibly fluid and just sketchy. Yeah. There's like a scene early in the game, not early in the game, but earlier than that scene, I believe, where there's like a car shootout. You're leaning out of the window of cars and shooting like motorcycles and helicopters and things. It's part of a chapter at some point, but there's also the minigame component. And you're headshotting these people and they're exploding like after hitting the ground at 90 miles an hour off their motorbike. It's just like there's no way those people are alive.
Of course they are.
And yet, the lore is consistent. So the arbitrary rules around life and death in this game, I think, are unfortunately so fluid that they cheapen the drama. Like you mentioned, the Makoto thing being a moment where you could have welled up. I agree. Like that was such a tragic moment. I think I probably did well up on the second playthrough, but like I cry at everything, so I can't remember distinctly anymore.
Same.
The later game stuff I know for a fact is where I was weeping, especially at the very, very end. But I think the story could have potentially been stronger if not for that, like, let's rush to the hospital and save her life, and then she's going to come back and have this revenge bent plot. And like I'm fine without that, despite really liking the moment we mentioned between like Mad Dog Majima and Makoto who can now see.
Yeah.
So
I will say also, minor spoilers, that the bending the rules around death, it comes back. Other characters, other games.
I assume so.
Yeah,
Yes.
It does. I do want to.
Whenever is convenient.
I do want to jump back to mini games a little bit because we have yet to talk about the greatest mini game ever invented, the Cabaret mini game. Because
Thank you.
So good.
Because like
Thank you.
So good.
So I hate to keep referring back to my own show. Oh, woe is me. But like that SideQuest episode, what also got my interest is like Derek literally yells into the microphone, by the way, where is my Cabaret minigame Sega? I would play it on my phone all the time. Give it to me.
I'd buy it.
I can't agree more. Like if they gave me a separate, just a game of just that, and I typically hate that. I didn't like the Gwent game that was separate. Like I don't typically like that, but for this, the Cabaret minigame,
give me a mobile game.
Yeah, I want it.
Running the Cabaret.
I want it.
Yes.
100%.
Please. That was the one thing. Well, there was a lot of things. I was like, I need to do this. I need to do this. Like I looked at of course they give you a list in the game that's like checks off, and it's very satisfying, and it just like it just ruins all my my lifetime management. But as I got later into the game and I was like, okay, I'm starting to dwindle a little bit. I'm starting to pick and choose more of what things I'm going to do and what I'm not.
Yeah.
But it was still like, but I'm going to max out that Cabaret mini game. The real estate game, I near the end, I was like, it's okay. I don't need to finish this. I got like 3/4 of the way and I was like, I'm okay.
Yeah.
No. Cabaret. That is my place. I will run that place like a pro. It's perfect. I will flip one girl from this table to this table, and this guy needs. Okay, I'll swap these out, and it's just and the music, and I'm just like, and it's the same song every time, and I didn't get sick of it. I probably listened to that music for I don't know, probably like 6 hours at least. And I was still like just bobbing away, just like bringing the menu and bobbing. Ugh.
So I've got bad news for you, Katie. About every Yakuza game after this one has a Cabaret minigame. So
I'm not mad at it.
Not all of them, but for sure, I'm almost positive Kiwami 1 and 2 do. And then I know...
Yeah.
And then I think some of the later ones too, but like they definitely do come back. And if not, there are other mini games that are more or less just like it or similar. So.
That's fine. Yeah. I will mainline those games and run the Cabaret.
Exactly.
That's fine.
It's fine.
I can add that on.
Yeah, the Cabaret is so in-depth. Like you mentioned, like just simply like managing the active Cabaret battles, like to frame that as a battle is maybe worth explaining as well, because you're competing against other clubs for like a monopoly of Sotenbori in the area. There's like 5 clubs basically, and you like escalate the scale of them, and they, like the clientele you receive becomes increasingly rich, which means that
pickier.
You have to be like, sorry?
They're pickier.
Yeah, they're way pickier. You recruit and expand your hostess sort of lineup, and the main like named platinum hostesses, they have very specific outfits that you can buy for them, like down to the earring, and like the shade of nail polish. Those things impact like how effective they are, how much money they can pull in. And then there's all these hand signs that you have to like memorize and learn from the table, where the hostess, there'll be like a little like, hey, we need attention at this table gesture. And then you zoom into the table with a blindingly white screen. That is relevant because I had to start closing my eyes because it was hurting them when I was playing these games. But like, they'll put up like a full open palm or something, or like they'll put like a circle with 3 fingers on each side.
New ashtray. That's what that means.
And you start to learn what that signifies, and not even like think explicitly about it anymore. You just automatically fill the need. It's so addicting, and winning against these other clubs, I think, is even more reassuring. Just like wanting to take over and win against everybody, like that becomes an obsessive pursuit. I would also agree that the real estate thing kind of burns out after a time. Like and I finished that and 100%ed it, like for the sake of trying to get the plat. But the Cabaret Club, like it deserves its own separate installment. I would play that for another dozen hours.
And mini games also is a thing that kept surprising me. I'm like, oh, now there's an underground blood sport arena. Why not? With like where you have to fight off a doctor who's been murdering his clients, and like come up with these backstories for the people that you're fighting. And I'm like, sure, why not? And then also, is it called the Catfight Club?
Oh no, you played the Catfight Club.
A little bit. I did.
Rock, paper,
and I
scissors,
was like,
but misogyny.
What is this?
It's
Where
wild.
am I?
Like I said, not a perfect game.
I mean, I'm not going to hate against it, but it's clearly like one of the most objectifying to women.
It's one of the
things
strangest things I've ever seen.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about the mechanics of the actual cat fighting, or do you want to just like forget about it?
I mean, I can go quick. Yeah, it's like rock, paper, scissors. And if you win, then your girl will pin the other girl in some kind of way, or like kick her in the face or something, or just hold her in a way that's weird and kind of sexually suggestive and uncomfortable. That was another one where my spouse walked by and he goes, "What are you playing?"
Yeah.
Another thing, I remember because we moved into my house not a little bit ago, but we still don't have blinds. Basically, we should, but we still don't. So I was all of a sudden I was like, I'm hoping the neighbors aren't looking through my window as I'm doing the telephone dating thing. And there's like a girl in her underwear, and I'm like doing like, "What are you wearing?" And or like, "What is your body like?" And I'm like, "What am I doing?
Yeah.
What is this?"
My favorite thing, I shared a GIF of this on Twitter today, but the dramatic way that he picks up the phone and then just, "Hey,
yes,
hi there." Like I love
hi.
it every time. The drama, the mini games are unbelievable, and the wackier the better. I think it's in 1 or 2. There's like photograph these models mini game, and it's like real. It's real women, like real actual, probably porn stars, like Imran said in the first one. But like that they're posing, and you take photos of them, and it's like real video, like it's real like actual footage of these actual actresses or porn stars, and it's just mind-boggling. It's like, but then the mini game of it is still fun, even though the rest of it is weird. And I love that too. Like I have to shout out the dancing mini game and the karaoke mini games as well. Like the Rockstar music videos in the karaoke game are so good. And then the dancing. I mean, we celebrate it every Friday night in the Discord, but like it's so goofy. It's so goofy. You can't not love it. Like watching Kiryu dance like a dork is just the best. It's my favorite.
Yeah, it's so endearing. There's other things in this game too that like we haven't even talked about, like Pocket Circuit. I don't know.
That was another one. I maxed that out too. I'm like, I am winning.
Really? Okay,
this
good.
This RC car Pocket Circuit thing. And it's basically because you get so many points to a lot to build your car with like different parts,
right?
And you collect them as you go through the game, and then like you can buy them from the little stand in the Pocket Circuit place. With what's the guy called? Racer or something. What's his name?
The guy that they call Virgin a bunch of times.
Yeah, the guy who runs the pocket car. It's like Racer or something. It's something very generic. Something about racing.
Yeah, it's basically that. I can't remember.
But so basically, you have to they allot you so many points for the race, and then the rates will have different obstacles. So it's kind of a puzzle, really, where you have to puzzle together which elements you need and at what cost, and like build the perfect car to win that race.
Yeah.
And that was when I just ran over and over and over again, and I'd lose, and I'd go over and back, and I just couldn't stop.
If you like that, then I can't wait for you to get to Like a Dragon, because there are some things in that game you are going to lose like yourself
Dragon
in.
Kart.
Oh no! And Kiryu also same thing. The melodrama when the car flips out of the race, out of the track, and just like. No, like the hands go up, or he holds his forehead, and it's like, like the devastation. It's
so good.
It's just priceless.
I feel like I should maybe make a few remarks about the real estate thing that we blew past, even though we said that, hey, we burnt out on it, because there are some really interesting tie-ins of characters you can like recruit.
Oh my god!
We hinted at Nugget, the chicken that you get from the bowling alley. I assume we all got Nugget.
Yes.
It's framed as
Nugget.
if you're. Oh,
that was a thing where I thought I have to get 3 strikes in a row. I was like, nah, I'm not doing that.
So
no, I'm not
just
spending
watched
time on that.
Yeah.
I watched a video on YouTube of like how to get the strikes.
It's not too bad.
It took like 10 minutes once I had the video in front of me. It took like 40 tries of just failure, and I was
Just
so
40
discouraged
tries.
before. But once you get Nugget's a fantastic financial manager of your real estate company.
I also would be remiss if I didn't mention. So Nugget is a live chicken that you get from a bowling mini game. What happens is
It's a chicken?
Yeah, so
the chicken
like
is
a
the manager?
real-
so yeah, what happens?
It's an actual animal
Yeah.
chicken, yes.
I thought it was going to be the woman, the receptionist,
No,
the person
she
who worked at
gives
the
you
place. I didn't know it was going to be an actual physical chicken.
That's probably what they're
Yeah.
going to mention.
I would have gotten that.
So what the story is, and I alluded to this in Derek's side quest, like you go to this bowling alley, you befriend this girl, and you start doing the league, and like they offer, if you get to this certain level or get 3 strikes in a row, whatever it was, you get a chicken dinner, is what the tease is. Like you get a fresh chicken dinner. What that actually,
I'd say turkey.
or turkey, yeah. And then what that actually meant is actually we don't have a turkey dinner, we just have this chicken instead. Well, we can cook it for you if you want. And you're like, no, give me that chicken.
Not the chicken.
And you adopt the chicken, and it becomes your financial manager. It becomes a person you can use within your real estate empire. It's
a good one.
a really good one too. It's not a gag. Like it's played so serious. It's the best.
There's others too. Like one of my favorite side quests is about this. This is going to sound really messed up at first, but because the sub stories are so wacky, one of them involves a high school girl selling her panties in a Burusero ring. And Kiryu intervenes in this and whatever, but because of, I mean, this is like the game framing the context here, because of her financial savvy running her little small business here on the street corner, he then hires her as well as another manager in this finance company. And just thinking that you would hire like a high school girl because of this like sex work sort of thing to run this real estate company.
She was incredibly successful.
Yeah, she was making bank.
Great.
There's other characters too, like there's like a poser musician you can hire, and like every time you conquer a district you can get like the kings of each district to like come help out in these regards too. There's so much involved in that. You recruit pretty much anyone you can build a relationship with, and I think that really fleshes out the real estate thing despite the inevitable like monotony and diminishing returns that it starts to yield.
I feel like this is a perfect segue into sub-story characters.
Yeah.
I mean, we've referenced her many times already. The dominatrix
my number one.
who is a bad dominatrix.
And you have to teach her to
like,
be a good dominatrix.
Yes, because she's like, get on your knees, please, if that's okay with you. And he's like, no, that's not how you do it. And so then you have to, you're rehearsing in a park.
Yeah.
She's like, well, we'll go practice in the park next to the kids. And she's like, well, if you were to say this, what would you say? And you have to tell her the like dominatrixy thing to say. And I'm like, just rolling through this. I'm like, well, you'd say this and you'd say this. And that was another moment of like, what is this game? And where am I? And what am I doing? But it was enjoyable. Every time I'm like, oh yeah, this is the answer. Of course.
Yeah. It's funny talking about the sub-stories. I can hear the little jingle that plays at the start of every sub-story in my head. It's so good. The music.
Oh, and then you hide in the corner of the room during her first like S&M session with this client, and I'm like, this is strange. She does a great job. Good for her.
Yeah. Get that money.
The other I also met. You referred to them in the first pod, Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
Not named Michael Jackson.
Was it Magic Johnson or something?
Yeah, not Magic. It's Magic
Miracle
something.
Johnson.
Miracle Johnson, maybe.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, that's Michael Jackson. And then I go, that's Steven Spielberg. And it's like, it's like Sean Spielberg or something. It's something so obvious. And he's got like his baseball cap, and he looks exactly like Steven Spielberg. And you help them make a music video where you run down the street with all these people dressed as zombies and basically recreate Thriller. Yeah. And I was like, can they do this?
Yes.
Are they?
The
Can they?
yes.
I guess they can. They're not named that, and I guess they're different enough. But yeah, it was like, oh, that was another one. It's like, oh, they keep surprising me. Now I'm talking to Michael Jackson and Steven Spielberg and helping them make a music video.
Yeah. Not the last time Kiryu also helps to make some kind of media. Also, he gets
known pop culture media.
He just gets wrapped up in other stuff. Producers always want him. He looks like a dependable guy. It's
he's got a strong jaw.
Yeah. I love how Kiryu can't say no and that he always wants to help.
No.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
that's the best part.
to be fair, I can't say no.
That's true.
There is a no option. There's
a
I'm too busy. I'll see you later. And no, but
Nope.
no, you're like, I mean, Steven Spielberg wants to, help him make a music video.
point.
I mean, I have to see this through. How can you can't walk away from that. I don't think I walked away from a sub-story until like chapter 15. I think there's 17 total. I think like 15, there was this lady in the street who basically gets the better of Majima, or she's like 80 years old or something.
Yeah.
And
the Obitarian.
Yeah.
Yes, and she like cuts in line, and he's like, "Excuse me," and then she's like, "He's yelling at me," and like she gets the better of him. And I was the third time she's like, she's there again, and I'm like, I could go talk to her again. I was like, nah, I'm okay.
I'm good.
But I'm still curious. It's still kind of in the back of my mind, like what was going to happen there?
Yeah.
Because it could have been anything. Anything could have happened.
You never know.
Well, hold on though. The Obitarian quest, the old lady who like glomps onto Majima and like she looks like she's having like almost a seizure when she's trying to come onto him, sort of thing. She is a hostess you can recruit to the Cabaret Club. If you did not know that,
Yeah.
I did
she's
not know
one of
that.
the best.
She's
actually.
She doesn't take no for an answer.
I want to say, I forget, because there's different like personality traits that you have, like funny and cute and whatever in the Cabaret. I want to say she's got a great
Maxed out on
personality, really
everything.
good at talking to people, like that sort of thing. And she, especially when things became snobby and picky for like the rich people and the mega rich people, she was one of my star players on the Cabaret floor. Like it's not just a one-off joke, this old lady's super horny for Majima. Like, no, she's a fantastic employee who rakes it in. It's really good stuff.
Like I could just play a game of sub stories. Like obviously it wouldn't be as fulfilling in the end because the narrative I think is why I come to these games. But like when I'm into the sub stories, if I'm not trying to like make a beeline through the narrative, like I'm never annoyed to discover one. I'm always just like, oh boy, what's this one? How does this go?
It's so funny you say that because my first playthrough, I was deeply annoyed. I think I wanted to mainline the story when I picked it up. I am someone who, in open world style games, AAA style games, like Matt, you mentioned, sort of like your kink is ignoring side quests. That is typically my ethos. I am willing to skip side stuff all day long. I'll try it at first, but if it doesn't immediately prove that it's worth my time, I'm done with side stuff. And so, like, I've had people tell me that I missed out on important things in Horizon Zero Dawn, for example, because the 5 or 10 side quests I did just felt pointless to me. And so in this game, in the first playthrough, the sub-stories happen to you when you walk in proximity to the person. It's not something you like walk up, hit dialogue box, and then start. It's something that just like, because you're in proximity to the character, it begins, and then you can choose to accept or deny it. And I was really annoyed because I'm like sprinting down the street to the next checkpoint, and all of a sudden I'm involved in the Buracero ring or something. And I'm just trying to get to the next scene for the payoff, which is what made a replay for Yakuza 0 so good for me, because I beat Yakuza 0 in like 36 hours the first time I played through it. Like, just did nothing on the side after I dabbled with it the first time. The replay took me to 160 hours. Like the difference there is magnitudinous. And just like one more, because we've talked about some of my favorite side quests or sub stories. I keep saying side quests. One is the Passport to Pizza one, which I don't know if y'all did, but there's someone who has like a sort of accent that Kiryu misunderstands, and she says she needs like a visa. And then he's like, oh, I got to go get a pizza. This is going to save, her relationship. And he runs, and there's this like epic quest to get this pizza and like keep it upright all the way back, and you finally deliver it, and it turns out she meant a visa so she can stay. It's like a commentary on immigration in the country. And the other one is like Majima has to pretend to be some random stranger on the street's boyfriend while there's like an interrogation dinner at a restaurant with a dad.
So good.
It's so wholesome, but also so absurd at the same time. Like, just the spectrum of things that you get up to in this game, I think are they put the icing on the cake for me.
I think the thing that also sells me on Kiryu is I'm a sucker for a himbo, and like especially in the first game, like he becomes less of a himbo as the series goes on because he gets more war torn and like he gets more like aged. But in this first game, he's so bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. He's just a himbo willing to help, and I love it. I'm a sucker for that every time.
Well, I feel like we've covered a ton of stuff. I know we skimmed over much of the main story beats and whatnot. Are there any standout things that either of you would like to bring up before we sort of move down towards closing?
I mean, I don't know. I think that, honestly, if we had regaled every chapter beat by beat, it would be a disservice to the game. I think it has...
I agree.
It has incredible writing. We hit on some of the spoilery stuff that I know folks would want to hear us talk about. I think that ultimately, if you've been curious, like, again, I don't fault anybody who go to Like a Dragon first. It is a good starting point. But if you really want a feel for the Yakuza series and want to get rewarded by playing Like a Dragon, start at 0. Like I said to Katie, you can absolutely mainline the story. And if you do, most of the games are between 20 and 30 hours, which... still a lot, but not as much as a lot of other games these days, especially AAA. Like, it's worth it just to mainline the stories and, like, get to that. Because, again, there are cameos in Like a Dragon that, like, my jaw dropped. There's a journalist named Rebecca Valentine, who I'm a big fan of, and who's also recently played through all the Yakuza games. And when I got to this moment I'm hinting to, and you can DM me on Twitter if you want to know which one, in Like a Dragon, I literally took a screenshot and then sent... Reb in all caps, oh my god, it's so and so, and like they just cackled. Like it's just this game really rewards you for enjoying intricate storytelling, and this is the start of that. This was kind of the revolution for the franchise that had not particularly been doing well in the States, and now seems to be doing quite well. But I don't have any complaints. Even those minor moments and issues, I think, are overall part of an incredibly well done, designed game. I mean, we barely talked about the combat in this because y'all covered that in part one a bunch, but like, I love the different fighting styles. I love that one of Majima's fighting styles, he just has a weapon all the time. And
that's all he does. It's just he just spins his bat around.
Yeah,
and it's great.
And the breakdancing like style, like, it was so much fun. But like, again, Kiryu, one of my favorite things to do with him in every game. This is the one combat thing I want to talk about. The best thing about these games is that there are context-sensitive special attacks. Like, you get throw moves that just are cinematic, like we hit them with a bike or whatever, and then there are context-sensitive ones based on your location. And my favorite will always be, and I think it started in this game, but has carried on to other games, is if you are near a body of water, a bridge, or a ledge, if you grab someone and throw them, you just... pick them up and throw them, and then it just cuts to the perspective of the guy flying away with this shocked look on his face as he takes a dive into the water. And every time I could do it, I did it. I threw hundreds of men into the water, and like, it's just those kinds of context-sensitive stuff, or like throwing them on a parking cone or whatever it is. I love those. Those are the best because they're just so goofy and cartoonish every time.
Mm-hmm.
I love the combat. I will say near the end, some of the boss fights get a little frustrating.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, I can't do the things that I'm used to being able to do, and I'm just getting beat down a little bit, and I'm like, where I'm just trying to get through the fights.
Yeah.
But like you said, the number of those like heat actions, those like special attacks, and the variety of them, and based on where you are, and like, and also what's your near inventory.
Yeah.
And it manages to keep things fresh, and also that there's different heat attacks depending on which style you're in. Like, it's never ending. Like, I still didn't get the little achievement for getting a certain number of heat actions, and I'm like, I've had tons of them, which means that there's way more that I haven't even touched that I never saw. I think that's, the combat's, it's fun, but that is what, like, to me, brings it up and makes it shine a little bit, is just the absurdity of all of these special attacks. And I just never got tired of watching them ever. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. The one note I might give for anyone like struggling with the late game is I mentioned this on the first podcast. I barely used weapons when I first played this because they break. They're not durable. I didn't really care to use them. But on the replay, I don't know what difficulty y'all went for, but I started on easy beginning playthrough. But this one, for the platinum, you need to do legend difficulty, which is like beyond hard. And when I was doing that, I was reading up a little bit in advance of these fights, and just bringing an armament of firearms is the way to go. Yeah. Like you stun the enemy, you do a chunk of damage, and that enables you to go up close and wallop them before they recover. And then like all the annoying blocking that happens in the late game becomes nullified. If that becomes a hiccup for anyone and they're like, I loved this game, I really wanted to finish it, but like, hey, bring some firearms, I think it'll be good.
Which was the strategy that I used when I went back before. When I'm wrapping up the game, it's like the last chapter, but I'm like, I should try and fight Mr. Shakedown again. I haven't tried to fight him since like chapter 2. And I just brought like 5 cannons with me.
There you go.
And then just ran away, turned around, and shot him with the cannon. Ran away, shot him with the cannon. And then it was actually very easy. And I was like,
it works.
Mr. Shakedown, please. But yes, at that similar near the end game, I was like, I'm struggling. I was like, oh yeah, I have a bunch of weapons that I could probably use. That will probably make this a lot easier. And that is the case.
I will also say this because I'm a big advocate for this everywhere. Play games on easy. Nobody's going to judge you. Like difficulty.
Amen.
Like I hate ableist bullshit. And so like I play a lot of games on easy. Not all. Like there are some games I want the challenge, but there's no shame in that. And especially in Yakuza in the late game, often to get through bosses, I just put it on easy so I could blow through. And like, I think it was Yakuza 3 most famously. I played most of it on easy just because it was clunky. So like, there's no shame. I've used mods on Dark Souls 3 to play that game and ended up getting to beat it. And it was still hard even with those mods. Like, no shame in playing stuff on easy. So, Katie, if you start to feel that fatigue while going through the series like combat, just hit easy and just keep on moving.
Big defender of easy mode as well. With the Yakuza games in particular, all you're doing is adding more button presses and more time to each encounter. The combat is not substantially different in substance between easy and legend. It's just a matter of like, okay, I familiarized myself with the moveset here, and that's it. I don't think that you're proving anything to yourself by playing on legend. And like, you mentioned, Matt, the Souls series. Like, I notoriously have cheated on virtually every game in the Souls series I played.
Same.
And that's fine. Like you say, they're still tough.
Yeah.
Like, play the games that in the way that works best.
I had 80% damage reduction in Dark Souls 3, and still 90% of the bosses killed me on the first try every time. So, like, there's plenty of, I had a helper on almost every boss fight in Elden Ring, my friend Glenn. Shout out Glenn. So, like, I would have never beaten that game if it weren't for him. Like, there's no shame. Absolutely not.
Well, I think we should probably bring this conversation to a close. So at this point, I'll hand it back off to you, Matt, if you want to tell us about where we can find you on the internet.
Sure. I, like the two of you said in the previous episode, the part 1, I am with Twitter till the ship goes all the way into the bottom of the ocean. I have the most followers there. I'm not doing that again. It takes a long time to get followers figuring out that social media nonsense. So I'm DJ_Stormageddon there. I am most places. I am DJ_Stormageddon, Twitch, TikTok, Instagram. Find me there. You can find everything that I do at djstormageddon.com. I have links to all of my podcasts. I think that the ones most relevant to the audience here will be Fun and Games, a podcast I do with the incredible Jeff Moonen, and Reignite, which is my now officially BioWare podcast, but we are in the Dragon Age series doing Origins. We just aired our episode about our origin stories, the characters we picked. Because in Mass Effect, you're just a human. For Dragon Age, we flipped a coin on which of the backgrounds, or we did like a dice roll for which of the backgrounds we'd start as, because it's the only game that lets you be different races with different backstories. And so it was up to random chance, and we complained about it, but we still did it. It's great. I think the best way to engage with me is Twitter for sure, but I will ask, if anyone listening already knows me and is a fan of Fun and Games already, I really humbly ask you to join our Patreon. We only have 3 tiers. $3, you get our eternal gratitude. $5, you get a shout out in the episode. $10, you get bonus content and all the other stuff. It really helps. We've been doing the show for a long time and working really hard on it for a long time at a loss, and it's just been nice now to have some kind of financial backing to it, and it only helps us grow it. We are not going to spend it on fancy cars. We're going to buy games to cover. We're going to buy the ability to go to conventions. We're going to buy better equipment to record with. Like, it's all going right back into the show. So because thankfully we are not relying on the Patreon for our livelihoods, and so anything that you can give to that, it's patreon.com/funandgames. Really appreciate it. It's a huge help. But just thank you for having me. This was so awesome. I'd been talking to Flora about something else, and Flora asked, hey, do you want to come on? And I was like, yes, the brand of how much I love Yakuza still lives on, even though I haven't talked about it in like 3 days. And it's just, I love being on this show. I'm a big fan of what all of you do. Cutscenes, Left Behind Game Club, Ludonarrative FM, like all of that stuff. I really am just honored and happy to be here.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming
you for agreeing
on.
to join.
My pleasure.
For sure. You hinted at the sort of financial support angle of things, conferences. Does there happen to be any conference coming up that people might want to know
Yes,
about?
actually. If you are in the Boston area for PAX East, the 23rd through the 26th, I will be there, and I will be on 2 panels. One panel hosted by the one and only Jacob McCourt. That panel is actually about how the GameCube is the greatest console of all time, which is factually accurate. And I am going to be on that panel. It's Friday, March 24th at 12 p.m. in the Dragonfly Theater. It'll also be streamed on Twitch, like the panel I did with Jacob at PAX West. And then I'm also going to be on a panel on Saturday, March 25th, with friend of the show, Luke Lewis. We are doing the ultimate video game music showdown. And the only thing I am more nerdy about than video games is music, so it is the perfect panel for me. And that's at 6 p.m. on the 25th, that Saturday in the Dragonfly Theater. That will also be live streamed. Also, I'll be walking around. I'll be interviewing developers and getting content for Fun and Games. If you see me, please come say hi. I love meeting folks. It's going to be a lot of fun. And these 2 nerds are going to be there, too. It's going to be great.
Yes,
That's right.
We are.
Katie, do you happen to know of any panels you might be taking part in?
Yeah. Me and Flora will both be at PAX. Very exciting. Fun fact, we're going to meet for the first time.
Woo!
Hell yeah.
Not weird at all.
Not weird at all. No, it won't be weird. We've talked, please.
It'll be fine.
We've talked Yakuza together. Psh. And yes, we're both going to be on another panel that Jacob McCourt is also hosting. Another video game trivia panel, just like the last one at, was it PAX West?
It was, yeah.
That he
Which-
did
2022.
previously.
Which I was on, yeah.
So yeah. Oh, good stuff. I'm excited. I believe the plan is for me and Travis to combine forces this time because we have trivia'd
Against
like
each
3
other.
times.
Yeah.
Because we've done a test one for the original first ever, and then we've done a couple other ones. So no, we're going to join forces, and hopefully this means I'm going to win. But yeah, so that's on Friday, March 24th at 7:30. I believe the Condor Theater. It's possible that's changed, but 7:30 on Friday night.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, until then, and perhaps after, you can find us on the interwebs at Twitter at Left Behind Game Club, Instagram at Left Behind Game Club, Discord, leftbehindgame.club/Discord. And if you enjoyed the show, do us 2 favors. Send it to a friend and give us a 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice.
Do it. That's
Kate,
the best thing you can do for your podcast friends. Review their shows. You don't even have to listen. Just give them 5 stars and review it. It takes 2 minutes.
feed the algorithm, especially when places like Twitter are going down. We need all the boost we can get. I will second that. Thank you,
welcome.
Matt. Katie, where can we find you on the internet?
I can be found on Twitter. I am at Lesperak, Lesperak. And as I mentioned earlier, I also am one of the hosts of Cutscenes, a video game movie podcast. And our current season 4. I should know that.
I'm pretty sure it is as a listener. I'm pretty
Thank
sure
you
it's
so much. Jacob's the pitcher of the group. We're doing our Last of Us series where we are covering the entire season 1 of The Last of Us week to week as it comes out. It's been a lot of fun. It's fun to talk about something that's good.
Yeah.
Because that was a rare occurrence before this. No, that's been a lot of fun. So I encourage everybody to check that out if you haven't already.
It's definitely a lot of fun to listen to. I've been keeping up every week. In fact, I downloaded today because the newest
Same.
episode released today, episode 5, and I have yet to listen to it. So when I'm at the gym tomorrow, that'll be the first thing I put on.
Thanks.
It's a joy to listen to, especially like you say, when video game adaptations are good. We don't have to sit there and pretend like our hobby is an embarrassing thing, and I will take that all day long. So you can find me on the internet on Twitter at LudoNarrativeFM. You can find me in the Left Behind Game Club Discord, and of course, EpilogueGaming.com. I most recently posted an article, a very controversial one, against the new Harry Potter game. And if you want to know why I'm against that, feel free to read all 6,000 words.
Can't imagine why.
I have some more lighthearted pieces coming soon. I recently played a game that was like a plant dating simulator.
Ooh.
So like, if you like houseplants, Travis, and you like dating simulators, me, then it's a perfect match. So yeah, there's more coming down the pipeline. And I guess since Mike isn't on the episode, I should drop the... And that wraps up our 2-part episode series on Yakuza 0. Perhaps we'll play more games in the future. Shout out Mike Ruffalo, and that, my friends, is one less game left behind. Actually, how should I set that up? Now that I think about it, I just don't want to say like shout out Mike Ruffalo like right after the hey dating plants. How does Jacob usually set that up? I never have to say this.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. That wraps up our episode on Yakuza 0.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. And that wraps up our 2-part episode series on Yakuza 0. And shout out to Mike Ruffalo, and that, my friends, is one game left behind.
One
less game.
Brain! I'm tired. Sorry.